Everybody, I'm Randy Abrams. I'm your host for the next two sessions. And I see that you all made it through the night. Unbelievable. I think you're more awake than I am. Anyway, we have two brilliant presentations ahead of us. And one of them is a very interesting story about VirusTotal from Randy Abrams. Actually, I know Randy Abrams for how many years? I don't know.
More than 15.
Something like that, yeah. Way too long, I think. Anyway, from Microsoft, from ESET, and from some other parties. Anyway, I'll go and give the room to him at this moment. Randy, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for all showing up. First thing in the morning on Fridays, tough. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about VirusTotal, as you probably guessed, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about VirusTotal on one slide. I know you think you understand what you thought I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is what I meant. And for most people using VirusTotal, that describes it perfectly. So just a little bit about VirusTotal. It was started by Hispasec, a Spanish company. It was acquired by Google in September 2012, which kind of caused a ruckus in the security company, security world, wondering what's going to happen. It's a cloud-based security resource. A lot of people call it VirusTotal virus scanning service. It's a lot more than that. They provide third-party analysis of files, URLs, domains, hashes, but they also do some of their own research and augment it with that, and they have a threat intelligence feed. So this is the interface most people are familiar with for VirusTotal. You tell it a file, URL, whatever, and you submit it. But there are other ways to do it. There's a desktop application. It gives you context menu, drag and drop. You can use email. If you put scan in the subject line, it's going to return the scan results like you would expect. If you put scan plus XML, you get XML. Email is the absolute lowest priority way to submit something. And for example, in researching the presentation 2 weeks ago, I submitted a file and it's not back yet, so I don't recommend email. VirusTotal has a public API. I encourage you to sign up for the VirusTotal community. You'll get a free API key, unless you don't know how to use an API like me. But if you do, go look. You don't need me to talk about it. I don't show it, but there is a private API that a lot of researchers in the room use, and it returns a much richer data set. There's also an Android application, which I kind of find, the little Androids, they know it, but evidently they don't know Google yet, so I'll submit Google for them. So who doesn't love a bunny rabbit, a cute bunny rabbit? Really, if you don't love a cute bunny rabbit, you've never seen a good recipe for a cute bunny rabbit. Okay, are all of you familiar with the killer rabbit of Karnerbach? Hey, wow, rat. This is referring to a Monty Python sketch. That little cute, harmless bunny rabbit jump up in the air and grab your throat and kill you. In fact, it took a holy hand grenade to kill that little whatever. So I got an email one day, and it says this is a cute little bunny rabbit, and it's got the executable attachment rabbit.exe, and tells me this is really funny. So, of course, I'm going to open it. Double click. Yeehaw. And
hey, everybody! I'm watching porno over here! Woo!
And that's what would happen when you double click on it. And it's like, I wonder what else happened. So I submit it to VirusTotal. And this is interesting. I have only found a couple descriptions for ZSELZOBs. There's a lot of variants, but the couple I have found are things like bots and downloaders and keystroke loggers. And I mean, this is pretty common in this result is Zolsi. Trojan, okay, win Trojan joke. We got two languages here, Trojan and joke. General variant, there's all kinds of detections here. It's all over the place. So, what is it? We've got an Artemis. Artemis is McAfee Cloud, so you can't tell what it is. 8 generic versions of Zesty, that's kind of bad stuff. 1 generic malware, 10 detections that call it a joke somewhere in the name, a riskware, 9 Trojans. Actually, the rabbit wasn't one, but it included a Trojan joke. 2 pups, and 28 products did not detect this at all as anything. So I got a riddle here for you. If he is she, then who is he, and is a dog a fish? Is a dog a fish? Yes? No? Nobody's going to answer. What language are you speaking? If you're speaking Hebrew, then he means she. It's a Hebrew word for what we say she. And who is he? And then, yes, a dog is a fish. Actually, typically it's spelled D-A-A-G, but it's pronounced. So remember that Trojan joke? We're using 2 different languages here. So if I say, I was out walking my dog in the snow when I ran into a friend of mine, do I mean a dog, or was I out walking my fish in the snow? He was wearing a bikini. Am I talking about, I hope not, this is bad. Or was I saying, she is wearing a bikini? I always knew he was strange. Am I talking about a guy or a woman that appears to be from a different species? So, is the bunny funny? Artemis, I can't tell. I suspect that it's a false positive, but I really can't tell you if that Artemis is saying it's a joke or a pup or whatever. Zesty Elzab, almost certainly a false positive, except maybe some of the variants aren't. I don't know. Generic malware, that's a false positive. This is not generic malware. Joke, yes, this is a joke. Email me if you'd like a copy of Rabbit.exe. It's a lot of fun to send to people. Well, you can't really send it in email unless you get them to unzip it. Riskware, okay, in a corporate environment, imagine that you're sitting in a call center and someone opens this up and 10 cubes all around here, hey everybody, I'm watching porno. And the real risk is to the person that sent it. There's no job anymore. Trust me, I don't have a job. Trojan, it's a false positive. Yeah, you can say any program can be a Trojan. I'll tell you what, you detect format, actually I think it's format.com, on a virus bulletin test, false positive. This is not a Trojan. Pup, potentially unwanted. Who in here does not want Rabbit.exe? And finally, no detection. And no detection is completely valid. There's nothing malicious about this program. There are no bad programs. There's bad people. So I'm going to go into some myths about VirusTotal. One of them is that VirusTotal can be used for comparative testing. And I'm not going to address it. I'll let VirusTotal address it. They're tired of repeating it's not used for comparative testing. And they're really, really nice. They say that if you're doing that, you've got implicit errors in your methodology, which is a very polite way of saying you kind of don't know what you're doing at all. Another myth, that VirusTotal detection of malware means that the antivirus scanner can detect the malware. Well, as VirusTotal explains, the versions they use are command line. And I can tell you from testing that a command line version does not necessarily behave as the version with a GUI. And they can have different techniques. Having a command line does not use the full suite and all the capabilities to provide protection or detection. You can have desktop and gateway solutions on the same scan, and you cannot compare those for comparative testing. That's apples and oranges, or apples and fish and dogs. And then the developers, the researchers, can add their own command lines, which can dramatically increase or decrease your heuristic capabilities. More geek mythology. Lack of detection means the file is safe.
You're gonna make me cry.
You don't believe that, do you? Do I have to explain that to anyone in the audience? Please say no. Thank you. Well, I didn't. Some people don't realize that because they can have custom detections, they can choose not to detect a file. They detect it, but they choose not to because they don't want to tip their hands to the virus malware authors that are using VirusTotal. But you start getting into context. Let's assume that this file is completely and totally clean. In fact, the one I submitted is probably completely and totally clean, but that doesn't mean it's safe. If you look at this in the additional file detail, the certificate was explicitly revoked by the publisher. Now, I was curious. Snooper is a weird copyright. Usually it's incorporated or something. The research I did led me to believe that they're a valid publisher. They might have revoked the certificate because it got stolen. That's probable. I don't know. You could revoke a certificate because it's got such a bad security risk you don't want people installing it. But a clean detection, it may be harmless. You probably don't want to run it. Another one I saw, certificate out of validity. Someone could have forgot to timestamp it. Maybe the company went out of business. But this is important contextual information. File not found. A lot of people think this file came in under suspicious circumstances. It's not found, and extrapolate, okay, nobody detects this brand new unknown piece of malware. No, it just means VirusTotal hasn't seen it. In one case that happened, so I went to OpSWAT, to their meta defender, and it turns out if VirusTotal had that sample, you would have seen at least 3 different products detecting it. So it's always good to get a second opinion, or third or fourth. There's a lot of stuff out there. False positive means false positive. And that isn't exactly true. Like I said, the vendors can withhold, they can add high heuristics, but this was really interesting that several scanners false positive on Hello World. It was a debug version, and Steve Reagan, it was awesome. He asked the vendors why it happened, and the responses were interesting. Hiram said that the layers work in conjunction, and since they've only got the command line, that false positive could have been mitigated by additional components. Dr. Sven Krauser from CrowdStrike, read the article. He has some humorous stuff in there too, but works with several other layers of defense. Raj, Sentinel-1, that just uses their dynamic machine learning engine, or the static one. They've got dynamic. You can use multiple layers, so that false positive. Yarno from F-Secure, it wouldn't have triggered on a customer machine because they have mitigation, and F-Secure, like many vendors in this room, also have machine learning. Vincent Wafer from McAfee, it was on the gateway. It probably was a true false positive, if you want to call it that, on the gateway. Heuristically, I think it's acceptable. But again, it wouldn't have been seen on the endpoint. I loved how Ryan described this because it's a valid approach. Just because it doesn't do something bad, it doesn't mean you don't detect it. It doesn't appear to do anything good at all. And what he's talking about is application reputation. You get that in Smart Screen, you get that in Google Safe Search. It's a very valid way of blocking unknown malware. You're going to get some unknown clean files. Developers can get off of the bad application reputation list. Here's one, false positive means false positive. Well, what about this? 4 out of how many, 57? Is it a false positive at 4 have? It's I don't care. It's adware, a pup, whatever. And testing, that's not a valid sample. Now, as a consumer, I might care. I might not want. I might even say if consistently products detect more pups than others, that their methodology, their decision-making is different, and I want the one that gets the pups too. But that's frequently also a configuration thing in the GUI. Detection by more scanners is better coverage. Oh, man, that one drives me nuts. The number of scanners that detect a file are not relevant as much as how many people and corporations are actually protected. So, VirusTotal here, 32 out of 64. Is that good coverage, bad coverage, mediocre coverage? Well, let's look at who's got it. OnLab, this speaks to geographical. Geography makes a difference. OnLab's in Korea, so we've got some Korean coverage here. Avast has a large market share. Baidu, China. ESET has a large market share. Kaspersky does. Malwarebytes does too. However, Malwarebytes is a bit interesting because frequently it's used after the fact. It's not, unless you have a paid version, it won't protect you as it comes in. But it's good for the techies that are trying to help a friend clean up. McAfee, Qihoo 360, China again. Rising, China. China seems to have really good coverage. Tencent would make it better. Trend Micro. So we're seeing a lot of people being covered. But look who missed it. Microsoft and Symantec. That's a large number of people. And if Symantec had gotten that one in this case, you could have had 10 scanners that detected it, not detect it, and more people are protected. In fact, in this case, 14 out of 58 looks like pretty poor protection, but Symantec got it. And that protected a heck of a lot of people. Qihoo and Rising, that helps in China, Kaspersky, ESET, Avast. So it's not the number of scanners, it's the number of people that they protect that matters for coverage. Okay, malicious website means malicious website. Another myth. This was an interesting one to me. The detection ratio, 3 sites said it's malicious. That's not uncommon. Even with really malicious websites, that's not uncommon for just a couple to call it bad. But in this case, that site is a legitimate political party, one of the oldest political parties in Hong Kong, and their site was compromised. And I found this very interesting, that when you go to the URL, there's this PHP file. And some of the data you can get from VirusTotal is, what other file names have we seen it under? And I'm not going to go through the whole step, but one of the other file names I saw was the name of a tool. It ended with .zip, a zip and a PHP, as you know. But in the file name, it said ARPAN. And so, what's ARPAN? And ARPAN is a Chinese website. And I don't read Chinese, so thank you, Google, for translating it for me. And you see this Wi-Fi universal key. What could go wrong? So I go click on it, and I come to the app information page, a QR code. You can just scan it and download it. There was below there a button for download, so I used the button, and what could possibly go wrong? So it's interesting that you can chain events together through the forensic information VirusTotal provides and find out where it ends up at. VirusTotal is not real-time protection, and they stress that. The quoted part is VirusTotal themselves. They don't replace other security products. They're fantastic, but that's not what they try to do. And so, because these presentations are supposed to be vendor neutral, I'm going to show a couple other scanning services. Joti actually is the one that's closest to VirusTotal. They have fewer scanners, but some people hate Google, so they're not going to do that, and Joti is an alternative. For me, what I really liked about Joti when I was researching this, VirusTotal is rolling out a new interface. It's pretty cool, but it's not throughout the world. And I started with the old interface, and I had to go to different countries through my VPN in order to get, the same types of output. And the problem was that I point my VPN at Spain, and everything's coming back in Spanish. Now with Joti, you can actually choose what language you want to see no matter what POP you're coming out of. Payload security is another one. They have a hybrid scanner, they call it, strong on heuristics. In VirusTotal, there's a little place where it has comments, and typically these comments are useless, but payloads are typically really good. They provide some information, heuristic information, and it's pretty rich. It's like this document, risk assessment, remote access, fingerprinting the machine. It's, it detects stealthiness. There's a variety, system security, a variety of heuristic indicators, which you combine those with what VirusTotal just told you, and now you're getting some forensic information. And I like that they give most recently submitted, because it's kind of fun to see what's been submitted most recently, what might be attacking me very soon. There's NSS Labs. NSS no longer has the free version of Cause, which is too bad. It was fun. But NSS isn't about virus scanning. They're not about malware scanning. They're really about providing threat information, and they do have a threat feed, but also down below, this is more global. The bypassing security products is talking about a specific profile. What products did I choose in my environment that I want tested? So this was the interface, and they don't scan all file types. They're very exploit concentric, and so you have a limited set, and they're looking for exploits in the documents, etc. And so here I have Windows Defender, Barracuda, and Fortinet, and you can see these detections are blocks. They're actually blocks for exploits. They're all over the place. But it's cool. I can also choose applications in my environment. Katera Labs, their focus actually is on helping protect website owners. And they help get people off Blacklist too, which is really important. It's a difficult thing to do. So their product, one of their products is ThreatSign. And this explains basically any website built, managed, hosted on any platform, that's what they're trying to protect. It just happens that they also have a URL scanner, and they provide information about like how many files are being downloaded at the time. They also, like this site has been blacklisted. If I'm a customer, I want to know, has my site been blacklisted? You know, what was being downloaded, clean files, malicious files, suspicious files. So that's another resource for you. And of course, OpSWAT Meta Defender. And as I showed earlier, there was a time when VirusTotal hadn't seen a file, OpSWAT did, and so I got that information. And you're going to find the reverse of it too. But I mean, the scanning is just part of overall service, and they have some really cool free tools that you can use also. And of course, you know, they've got a big portfolio. So yeah, you might call them competition, but they're really not. That's just integration with an existing infrastructure. So, you know, I want to conclude with a few bullets. VirusTotal provides some great information that a lot of people don't understand is available. They provide threat intelligence, as do other companies. I don't think most companies, IT professionals, are going to use only one threat feed. I don't really consider them competition for companies providing threat feeds as much as complementing. A lot of contextual information. If you haven't gone to tabs other than scan, oh man, go through it. There's really cool stuff. You'll get links to hashes where it'll tell you more things. If I had more time, I would show you this huge chain of events where a file was clean. It's just it showed up with 30 other malicious files. And I really value VirusTotal. I'm happy and grateful that Julio was willing to review the content for this presentation and make sure I didn't give you bad information that you would hammer me on. So if you have any questions, Julio's here.